Awesome. GM guys, welcome back to another Touch Grass podcast. This one is super special one for me, especially. We have Hansolar from Lighter. I've been following Hansolar for a couple of years now. He's the one who got me into farming Lighter and using it. And I'm super grateful because I already got an exit with some of my points. But yeah, we're gonna dive into everything about Lighter, what happened recently on 1010 and future of Lighter, what's it look like, and the whole perp DEX landscape. Welcome to the show, Han.
Hey, thanks for inviting me.
Awesome. I think before we get started, like, why don't you walk us through about your talk to your crypto journey? Were you always a trader? What you used to do before joining Lighter? Yeah.
So I started just as like I guess, spot trader in 2017. Participated in a couple of like ICOs. I don't know if anybody remembers like Icon back in the day. So, uh, and I guess I used to be a dev. So I used to work for banks, developing software for them, and at the dev shop, basically, I sneakily used some of the servers to mine Ethereum back when it was like at $12, and then obviously sold them at ridiculous prices and been trying to make it back ever since. And then after a few years in the kind of software development world, um, I guess my stack grew to a size that was okay to just full-time trade. And so I was around for the whole DeFi summer thing, and um, I was also mostly interested in DeFi stuff ever since, um, and took a bit of a detour into crypto options for a bit. I thought after GMX had brought perp DEXs on chain, I thought it was super natural that the next big thing would be options. Obviously, that was a disaster from my side as an investor. Not on the space in general. Um, and then maybe from about 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I started trading more seriously on perps, and that's how I started getting more and more involved in Lighter.
And what was sort of your earliest memory of Lighter? Like, how were you introduced to the team? How did you sort of join the team? Is there a backstory there?
Yeah, so I mean, like as like a perp trader, like on X, like you get kind of like offers from perp dexes all the time, and I guess I'd missed like hyperliquid, so I traded on it a bit, but like not seriously enough, I think. And so I definitely like had my ears open, and when a team member from Lighter kind of reached out, um, it kind of looked the same. It kind of sounded the same as a lot of other perp dexes. Like they were all like very performant, and like they were gonna have a lot of liquidity, and like the tech was special. But like the thing that kind of interested me was actually like more so the team and like the backers. Um, like I'm a big fan of the All In podcast. Well, I listened to it much more before, not so much anymore, but um, it's become like mainstream media now that they're like the number one podcast in the world. So like it I feel like it used to have more alpha before, so now it's just like mass media. But I was like a big fan of David Sachs, and hearing that David Sachs was an investor, I thought that was like quite different to a lot of the other perp dexes that would just raise from the general kind of crypto VC crowd, right? Like it's basically like all the same people. Like no offense to crypto VCs, but I thought it was like a bit of fresh air on that side of things, and so that's why I started kind of doing like
Did you
just
already did you
yeah.
already know, like, when you were uh, like the founder, he was ex Robinhood. Was that kind of also played a role?
I think I learned that along the way. I think the first kind of thing that really piqued my interest was really David Sachs. Sorry, Vlad. and then and then after starting to get to know the product a bit more and the team, I was like continuously like surprised at kind of Vlad's background, obviously, and the team's background, the vision, all that kind of stuff. It was pretty gradual. So yeah, I mean, these like opportunities, like a lot of the time it's just like luck and kind of having exposure. I mean, I was doing like consulting work for Lighter alongside, playing with a couple of different like perp DEXs and DeFi projects at the same time. And then as you kind of like learn about all these different projects at the same time, obviously like Lighter had kind of stood out in terms of just
Yeah,
the kind of people that were involved, I guess.
yeah. I think you said you missed Hyperliquid. I was going to ask you about that. Like, uh, like I think we are there's so many perp dexes right now, and obviously everyone is kind of leveling up, and what we are seeing. As you saw the process of building one of the best perp dexes now, how hard is it like to build a perp dex? I mean, I remember Jez mentioned this a lot on Twitter. Like, building a perp dex is a lot harder than people think, even though we are seeing a new one pop up every week now. As someone behind the scenes, how hard was it in the early days? Like as a power user yourself, like in terms of performance and stuff like that.
Um, how hard is it? I mean, I think actually there's a lot of hard parts, like because this perp space is so competitive. Like, you literally have to do everything right, right? If there are like 8 different like aspects of a perp dex, you need to do all of them at like a super competitive level. Whether it comes from UX, then like I guess like marketing, like back end stuff, like the speed, obviously, and then like security has to be super tight. um and then there's like regulatory risk, like you need to have like um defenses against that side of things. And then like timing the market, like it's just like you have to do everything right. And so obviously doing all those things at the same time is super hard. But I think if you ask Vlad like what's the hardest part of building a perp dex, he'd say it's like the ZK proof part about it, which I can't even like fathom how difficult that is. Because like uh, that requires like a pool of kind of mathematicians that you kind of have to like search the world for in order to find like people that can actually do that. And so Lighter finds these people through these young kind of guys that have competed in IOI competitions, and things like that, and their friends basically. um, and so yeah, I mean the stack itself I think is slightly different to what everybody else is doing, and that adds a layer of kind of difficulty to
Yeah.
building the exchange.
Yeah, 100%. I think he is one of the few Perplex founders who has repeatedly said that CK proving is going to be one of the most important things for not only Dexes but other apps as well. Uh, Super cool. Uh, I wanted to ask, like, there's so many new dexes popping up right now, and I think a lot of them are really good. Like, I think Hibachi is good. I think Variational. I think that's also really popping off. I think the TVL from last I saw was, I mean, I think it's kind of hitting escape velocity. Do you think it's still like positive EV to farm perp dexes at this point? Not like I'm not saying lighter or hyperliquid because I think the it's too competitive now. But for
Yeah.
someone who's like who has low capital and looking to and perp taxes are still a very big space and they'll keep growing. Do you still think that that's something you would recommend someone with very less capital?
Okay, so let me answer that by maybe like going backwards a bit first. So the previous kind of like vintage of perp dexes, there was like Avo, there was Vertex, and maybe like a couple of more. There was Hyperliquid, right? Like that was like the previous season of perp dexes that competed against each other. Like tech wise, they were like all kind of similar, I'd say. Like speed wise, like I think Hyperliquid, what they did best is probably like HLP. Like both of them didn't have HLP, and so that was like the differentiating factor in terms of liquidity. And so I think people kind of gravitated towards that. And if you look at the charts, like both Avo and Vertex are like demolished, right? There was Drift as well, which also it did okay, but like nothing compared to Hyperliquid. So this vintage, we have like a whole bunch of new guys as well, right? And I think Lighter is definitely leading the pack, but there's also like Aster, variational, as you say, Extended, Edge X, all these guys. And so like personally, like I only like to bet. Well, I like to put all my eggs in one basket. I'm a super like high risk guy, and so that's why like if anybody asks me like what should you farm, like I'd say like what I do personally is I trade on Lighter, but there are a couple of other exchanges that have piqued my interest. Namely, I think variational is pretty interesting. Timing wise, as you say, it's pretty early, even though it did do $1 billion in volume like yesterday. So it and like the day before that it did like 200 million. So like it's growing super super fast. I still think it's kind of early. And the reason I like variational is just that they offer almost like 20 to 50x leverage on very long tail assets. So like you can short things like Pi. Have you guys heard of Pi coin? It's like a Ponzi coin that like
Yeah,
Korean like 50-year-olds like
it's
uh,
it's it's
find.
it's one of those assets that gets listed, delisted, listed, delisted.
Exactly. Yeah. So you could short that kind of stuff. Like how wild is that? Like no like order book decks that's structured in a way where there's like a self-owned, like a protocol owned like liquidity pool. Like they wouldn't list that, right? But like variational does. And so like being able to short those kinds of coins, or maybe just like doing short scalps, is like a very interesting proposition. And so that's like the one I find like actually unique in the pool of all the order book kind of dexes that are kind of like fighting for the same position.
Is that
Yeah,
something that the team talks about a lot in terms of competitive landscape, to adjust sort of your like one thing that I think is really interesting about Lighter is the listing strategy. Um, how like is that something that's come out of the competitive landscape, or is that sort of Vlad's thesis and the team's thesis on how it should be done?
So what do you think Lighter's listing strategy is?
I would say it's to list immediately. I would say it's very similar to Hyperliquid's initial strategy, where you want people to access leverage as soon as possible, but Lighter has a higher leverage count than Hyperliquid, is what I've observed.
I think
Yeah, yeah.
another point to that is one of the things why I actually switched over to lighter is Hyperliquid doesn't have some of the older assets as well. Not yes, they list some of the newer assets very quickly, but the the higher volume assets they may not be new, but they are not listed on Hyperliquid. Even some of them still are not listed. So I think what Lighter does very well is they listen to the. I mean, there's a channel in Discord for ticker requests. I think a lot of them, whenever there's more requests of the same ticker, I think those usually get listed. And as Rachit said, more leverage as well.
Yeah, I mean, like the perps game is like I think pretty simple, right? You list things that people want to trade, and that's where the volume comes from, and in turn fees. And so Vlad is playing to win, as I'm sure Jeff is, and all the other perp dexes are. And so they are looking to see where there are opportunities in terms of providing you know uh, coins that people can trade as quickly as possible, and in some cases offering more risk, more leverage as well is also like a differentiating factor for someone to choose lighter over something else. So it just comes down to, I guess, like how much do you want to win, right?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I think, but at the same time, they're not as bad as some of these other centralized exchanges where they just list someone's dog, someone's plant, or some dog shit. uh, so I think that's better part about some of these perp dexes. Uh, awesome. I mean, I really want your thoughts on what happened on 10th October. Uh, how do you think like the team responded, the community responded? I think everyone was super supportive and super. I think everyone came together, but from the inside, what was the war room like? Uh, and yeah, what was that experience?
I'd also love to know how you did personally that weekend.
Yeah, okay. um Yeah, so I mean, it was like a three sigma like move for Bitcoin, and then probably like maybe like four, five, six sigma moves for like altcoins. So it was a pretty wild day. And so Lighter had some like slower service into the event. And then so this is just basically what happened. And then during the actual crash, it was operational, but not like at full speed. And then after the crash, maybe about 5 hours later, the service there was a service outage, so nobody could use the service, and that stayed that way for about 5 hours, 4 or 5 hours, and then came back online. Um, and the reason that happened was basically it was a database kind of load issue. So there is like a database in the backend that processes and saves some of the code, as well as saving it on the blockchain. Um, but that kind of system was supposed to be updated that Saturday. Actually, it was planned for Saturday, but we didn't want to interrupt kind of the trading during the week, and it was pushed back for when markets were going to be a bit quieter, and it turned out that um, that wasn't the case. And so that database infrastructure had to be updated and rebooted and all that stuff. And so that's kind of why it happened. There was like a compensation kind of thing where the people that lost money during the outage period and the kind of like delayed service period, they were compensated with points. And we should probably touch on ADL. Yeah, so everybody learned what ADL was this time, right? Like, if you traded on like BitMEX and Binance, like you would have seen like the ADL gauge like creeping up if you had like a really big position. And so you'd kind of know what it is, but I feel like a lot of kind of like perpdex traders have never been ADL'd, first of all, and none of the perpdexes have that kind of gauge on the positions. I don't even know if Bybit and Binance have that right now. They used to. But yeah, so if you had both longs and shorts during the crash, ADL basically kind of closes your positions based on profitability. Like, so if you have a lot of profits and it's a big position, um, they consider somebody's losing, basically, right? If somebody's winning, somebody's losing, and so that loss becomes too big for the exchange to cover, and so they force you to close a winning position. Um, And what that does for like someone that has both longs and shorts, which is what a lot of market makers do, it means you're unhedged on the long side. And if you're not hedged on the long side during like, a situation where the market's going like up and down, like in crazy kind of like percentages, then, you end up getting liquidated. And so a lot of market makers got liquidated during the crash, especially on Binance, and then some on Hyperliquid as well. Interestingly, Lighter didn't have that many people that got ADL'd. They only got ADL'd on the way back up. So people that bought like the Pico bottom that day, whether it was by luck or just like dexterity, some of them might have gotten ADL. So like ADL wasn't a very big issue on Lighter, and the reason for that was the logic for ADL triggering on Lighter is it's whether the LLP can cover the losses of the users trading against it. And during the period, the open interest of Lighter was maybe about 7 times larger than LLP. So that is actually a pretty low ratio. Whereas Hyperliquid, it was like 30 to 1. So the open interest was massive relative to the amount of like liquidity that that HLP was able to backstop, and so they had to be much more aggressive with their ADL policy. And so that's like the general kind of like overview of
Also,
what
I
happened.
think at least I saw on Twitter that most of them got ADL at favorable prices, so their trades were more profitable on Hyperliquid.
Yeah, so
KJ,
I
I feel
saw
like
the analysis
everything we
on
heard
that.
about ADL that week, like everyone was an ADL expert.
Yeah.
It was an interesting way. But yeah, Hansel, what were you saying?
Yeah, so I saw the analysis on that, and I mean, the ADL started like near the bottom, but there were still wild wicks like up and down during that period, right? So if you were ADL'd early during that like volatility period, you'd still get liquidated, right? So like on a statistical basis, it may look like, people were ADL'd near the bottom, but like based on what you were holding, like it didn't matter, right?
Yeah.
You'd still get liquidated, and that's like what needs to improve basically for all kind of perps, I reckon. And then on my side, I got destroyed that day. I think I like it's been a pretty hard like trading environment since then. I think I was down like 30 to 40% like post the crash. So my style is like I have 1 or 2 conviction plays, and then the rest are hedges. And I took off a lot of my hedges like just before the crash, because I thought, as the market was going down, I was like, oh, nice prices to long, right? So I stupidly like added to my longs and ended up overweight on longs relative to shorts. And so that's what caught me off guard. And yeah, I'm taking like a pretty substantial drawdown on my portfolio since then.
Yeah, I've seen your post. I think even before then, I think your journey on your overall equity curve looks crazy. Uh, like, do you think like 2025 has been, even though you're profitable, I think it's been like one of the most difficult years for trading. Even though there's been pockets of outperformance, but whenever you kind of want to double down, market kind of always punishes you. It's always been like that. What do you think about this year in markets? And do you think like we'll see a better 2026?
I think, markets like from the outside, like it gets, harder and harder. That's like, I think, something that just happens because, the participants get smarter, whether it's, whether it gets like more efficient at being extractive, or, or the alpha is just like more harder to come across. Like that's just a natural progression of markets. From the perspective of like a participant, um, that is like, I think it just basically means you need to, improve your system for every year, right? Because and it's like an inflation rate, right? The difficulty of the
Yeah.
market will continue to increase at like a set speed. You have to just improve your system so you're improving faster than that inflation rate. This year obviously was like you needed to throw away a lot of the kind of fractals and patterns that you used from previous cycles. But if you look like deep into it, cycles are always different, right? 2017 was different to like 2020, 21, and like that's also very different to 2025. It's just how markets work.
Yeah, 100%. I think even with all the institutional kind of entering the markets, that has also kind of made it very different environment to trade. And I've seen so many posts on like this last week, so many OG traders, even they just been everyone's like this time is different, and they've been following the same kind of market cycle. So I think everyone's kind of has to adapt. Yeah. Uh, yeah, I think the next question regarding we took a tangent about your trading journey. Regarding lighter, one of the things that's so unique is its composability aspect. Like, what do you think is like possible, and if you can explain, what does it even mean to be composable with Ethereum apps? And uh, I know that there's so many possibilities, but what are you seeing right now, and what are some things people can expect in the future?
Yeah, so one of the questions that we get a lot is when do we get like a lighter EVM where there's like a generalized kind of like programming environment where you can deploy things like lending protocols and like AMM swaps and like NFT platforms like um yeah so first of all, like the structure of how lighter is built makes that slightly more difficult because all the logic in that's related to running the perp decks is the proofs are like highly optimized for efficiency on speed and cost. So there are no like generalized ZK proofs like used. There's probably some, but most of it is like highly customized, and that's purely so that lighter could be as fast as possible, as cheap as possible, and so that kind of architecture makes it slightly more difficult to um, have like a generalized environment for people to build on. There is like a path to doing that, which is what Vlad had spoken about recently, and it's like a you use something like succinct the succinct I can never pronounce this succinct generalized like ZK SDK, and then attach that to Lighter's sequencer. So if you do that, then you'd be able to do like, you'd be able to write any kind of code that you want to, as you would in Solidity, and then they would spit out a proof for you. So attaching that would allow, more kind of um, like a more generalized like programming environment. Um, and if that's in place, then people can do, lots of different things like build different kinds of applications that work with Lighter. So that's one aspect of things. And then the composability aspect of being built on Ethereum as an L2, that opens up the possibility of moving assets from Ethereum onto Lighter quite easily, and then and backwards as well. So at the moment, like Vlad is kind of cautious about talking about what's possible because, I mean, in people's imaginations, like anything is possible, right? It kind of has to get built first, but some of the things that people are thinking about are like if you have like an LP position on Uniswap, like maybe like a Bitcoin, Ethereum LP position, you could tokenize that as like an NFT, and then you could use that as like, you could prove that you have that on the ETH1, and then use that as margin on Lighter, and then trade against that margin. And so if you get liquidated, then on the ETH side, that LP position would be liquidated. That's like one example. And then I guess like lots of other things where you could maybe use like your collateral that's being deposited on Aave, and then tokenizing that and maybe using that as margin. I think just like the expansion of leverage on ETH native assets can be like a huge unlock, right? I don't think anybody's done that, and that
Yeah.
feels to me like a DeFi summer 2020 kind of situation when we first got on-chain leverage. That unlocked so much capital, and that's what basically like started that huge trend. If Lighter can unlock something similar to that, I think it could also be like a big new kind of like DeFi maybe 2.0 kind of situation.
Awesome. I think we're almost out of time. I'm gonna ask my favorite question: are we gonna get $1,000 per point?
So I'm like quite a data-driven person. So how I frame it is I have like a model to see like kind of what's possible in terms of prices for points. And the model that I like the most at the moment is the model that compares open interest of perp DEXs relative to their circulating market cap. So you can see like a live version on my website, perpetualpulse.com, perpetualpulse.xyz. If you like drill down into one of the projects and scroll to the bottom, you'll see the model. And I've tested like a lot of different kind of factors that describe or explain the market cap of perp DEXs. I've looked at like volume, like number of users, like TVL, and basically OI, open interest of the exchange, usually explains the circulating market cap of an exchange or a perp DEX for like 91%, like 91% explanatory power for the market cap, right? So it like explains most of how the market is valuing these perp DEXs. And so like all the currently live kind of perp DEXs kind of fit this model very well. Everything from like Hyperliquid to like GMX to Drift to Jupiter. And so what I do is I look at the open interest of perp DEXs that haven't launched yet, and look at their and then plug them into the model, and then see like what the price is. The current kind of like OTC price of Lighter tokens are like $92. That's actually like a very reasonable price for the current OI, right? And that's like around a $4 billion FDV and a like $1.2 to $1.5 billion circulating market cap. That's I think fair for the current open interest. But that's assuming like there's no growth, right? If Lighter continues to grow on the trajectory that it has been, and at a similar speed, then 2x at TGE is pretty reasonable. So like prices of around $180. And if that OI continues to climb into next year, then obviously like prices are not bound by anything but the speed of the growth. So that's what I would be watching carefully.
Yeah, one thing that's super interesting that I've been seeing on the timeline is there when people are fudding Lighter points, people in the comments, like users, are saying, I don't actually care because I've saved so much on fees the airdrop or the points are just extra on top that I get as a user, which I think is super, super interesting community sentiment. Han Solo, last question. I think this is probably more for me than anyone else. Do you have what's your number one advice for any sort of perp trader in this current environment? Like, how are you playing things? What's your advice in your Telegram group? Give us some alpha.
Don't trade. Don't
Okay.
trade in this environment. This is an environment for sickos, right? Like, if you're just getting into perps, like, never trade this environment. Trade like when it's trending. But if you're a sicko like me, like, I would suggest like pair trading. So like a really good pair that I've liked is long hype and short aster.
Yep.
And that's worked for like, let me just check the price. This has almost been just like an up only chart
Yeah.
for like,
I think since the airdrop they announced, I think Astro's been down only, and
Yeah.
CZ hasn't mentioned it once.
for about a month. It's just been like going up, like, and I think what I like to see is like, you know, the technical momentum is there where people are kind of like waking up to the fact that Aster's shit and their tokenomics are shit, their devs are shit. Like, it's like an opportunistic like cash grab. Like, you know, people are waking up to that, right? And Hyperliquid is like one of the most genuine like perp dexes out there with like a very strong founder and like a very strong community. Like, why wouldn't you pair trade that, right? And so yeah, that's what I would, you know, suggest for a new guy. Try out pair trading.
100%. This is awesome, Hansolar. I think this is one of our best pods, and I've learned a lot as well. Thank you so much for coming on today. And maybe once markets pick up and we actually have a breakout all-time high, we'll have you on again. And I think by that time, I hope lighter TG and we're all millionaires.
Yeah, sounds good. I really appreciate you guys bringing me on. That was really fun.
All right. I appreciate you.
Awesome.
All right, guys.